but I think it's time and we should get started. So, first of all, I thank you all for joining today, and I welcome you all to this session, Value Stream Mapping Fundamentals. I would like to introduce myself first. I'm the founder for the community of practice of DevOps in Canada, which has 3 chapters: Toronto, Ottawa, and Edmonton. And I'm also the organizer for the DevOps Summit, which happens in Canada. So if you're interested to join us at the event, we welcome you all. The event is on November 8th and 9th, but we already have a lot of pre-events. And one of this session today is part of the monthly theme, which we are carrying in March. That's business agility and DevOps. So we will actually explore some of the tying elements of value stream mapping and how it is integrated with DevOps and so on and so forth. So without wasting any time, I would like to introduce Donna. And first of all, I would like to thank her for accepting our invite, and she was able to speak to us today. So that's great. She has a loaded profile, so let me see if I can justify how should I introduce you, Dana. But I know you from the DevOps Institute perspective, so you're ambassador with DevOps Institute. You're also ITIL for lead examiner. You're a certified process design engineer, ITIL expert, managing professional and strategic leader, and you have a lot of certifications on your profile, so I'll not go into that. I think it's a lot, but it reflects that how privileged we are today to have you. So the forum is yours, Dana, and I would like that you can share your screen and you can actually help us understand value stream mapping fundamentals.
All right. So can you see my screen? You should be seeing my screen now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yes.
And you know what I want to say about my credentials is that I'm a lifelong learner and I love learning about new and different ways of working. And one of the things I think is really fascinating about where we are now in the IT industry in particular is that all of these different frameworks and methods of working, Agile, Lean, DevOps, IT service management, are all coming together. All the pieces are starting to fit together now and really enable modern IT and enable organizations to work at higher levels of velocity to achieve value. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, how all these bits and pieces work together. I mentioned that I'm joining you today from Tampa, Florida. And so since this is the Canada community of practice, and I know there's got to be some hockey players in the room, I just couldn't help but mention that we are here in Tampa, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. So everybody repeat after me, go Bolts. And we also are the reigning Super Bowl champions. So it's been an exciting sports year here in Tampa. Well, we're here to talk about...
Sorry, Donna, we are a big Oilers fan. I can't support that.
No, I'm teasing. You know, we always acknowledge here in Tampa that, you know, a good portion of our team are Canadians. So we respect the Canada hockey tradition.
There you go.
So let's begin. And I want to start off by just talking in general about performance. And what is the real difference if you look at high performing organizations and low performing organizations? And for any of you that have followed the State of DevOps report through the years, and I always tell people that a good way to understand DevOps is to go back to the 2014 State of DevOps report and read every report every year, right, until the current year. And you really see how high performing organizations have evolved. And they've evolved because they've continuously improved. So that's what really separates, right? The high performing organizations from the low performing organizations. The high performing organizations, it's never good enough. They're always looking for additional ways to improve. And we can leverage best practices in order to do that. So I mentioned Agile and Lean and DevOps and IT service management, what you might know as ITIL, are all now coming together and can all benefit organizations. But they can't operate independently. They have to focus on the delivery of value, and value is defined from the customer's perspective, and they have to be adapted and integrated across value streams. So what is a value stream? Simply put, it's the sequence of activities we use to design, produce, and deliver products and services. So it's the internal way in which we work in order to design, produce, and deliver our products and services. It sits at a much higher level than processes. Processes define how we do work. How do we handle changes? How do we handle releases? How do we handle incidents? Value streams sit up at a much higher level. They span multiple organizations. They span multiple functional areas like dev and ops and security and testing, right? And they typically span multiple processes. Value stream mapping is a lean technique, and lean is a production philosophy that really focuses on improving flow. A lot of times folks, when they talk about lean, they lead with it's about reducing waste. But reducing waste is really, kind of just a method we use in order to get to our ability to improve the flow of value within our organization. Lean is not a new concept. It dates back to the 1950s. We in IT are a little bit late to the party. It wasn't until around 2010 that we started seeing organizations embrace the ability to use lean thinking and lean production methods in IT organizations. In 2010, Mike Gorzin published his Lean IT book. In 2010, Jez Humble introduced the Continuous Delivery publication, which spends a lot of time talking about lean and the application of lean to DevOps. And if you know your DevOps history, around 2009, the term DevOps was coined. So it's been only about 11, 12 years since we in IT have started thinking about how can we leverage lean production. It's important to understand that value stream mapping is not for the faint of heart. This is really a strategic initiative because you're going to get up at the macro level, you're getting up over the different functional areas in your organization, you're getting up over processes. So you're really, when you undertake a value stream mapping effort, it really should be viewed as a strategic initiative, and you should go about it in an effort to achieve really dramatic improvements. You're really thinking about why you do the work you do, and maybe more importantly, should you even be doing some of the work you're doing? Maybe not, because it's waste. And you're also thinking about where you're doing that work. And I'm not saying lead with reorganizations, but it's no surprise that a lot of times when organizations undertake a value stream mapping effort, you start to see that move from maybe project-oriented teams and traditional dev and ops silos into more product-oriented teams. So there's a transformation that occurs when you start thinking about things from the value stream mapping perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that processes aren't still important. Remember that value streams are the overarching concept, and processes underpin those value stream activities. So we're still going to undertake continual process improvement initiatives, either flowing out of our value stream mapping effort, or we may realize that in some situations, we don't have to look at this from a value stream perspective. We know we have some process issues, and so you just use continual process improvement techniques in order to make those improvements. Process improvements occur within organizations or within functional areas, within individual processes, and we're really now looking at how we do our work, not why and where, but how we do our work. So value stream maps and process maps are both important. They have different perspectives on the same set of work activities. And what they let you do is kind of zoom in and zoom out in order to see the level of activity that you want. at the value stream level, you're thinking about it strategically. Typically, there's the need for leadership involvement when you're talking about the value stream level, because again, you're up above different functional areas within the organization. You're up above, a number of different processes. With process level maps, you're engaging with the people who do that work, and you're empowering the people who do that work to figure out then how to do the work, right? What's the most efficient way in order to do that work? So this provides you a visual representation of what a value stream map looks like. It maps the flow of information. So you'll see the different information systems that you use within your organization. You might have Jira, you might have ServiceNow, and you might have a myriad of DevOps tools that you've integrated together, right? To pass information across to your value stream. It shows the major activities in that value stream, and it shows the flow of material across that value stream. Now, in the context of DevOps, material is things like code, right? It's things like your different software artifacts that are flowing through that value stream on their way to allowing us to co-create value with our customers. And a big part of what we want to do with value stream mapping is understand the timeline associated with that flow of activities. So some of our core DevOps metrics like lead time and cycle time are going to come out of your value stream mapping effort. One of the reasons why there's value in looking at things from this macro level perspective, Mike Rosen always says that value streams are artificially linear and artificially simple, right? Think about all the work that goes into, designing and producing and delivering software. And in a value stream map, you want to be able to show that in roughly 6 to 10 activities. Why do you do that? Because it lets you now start to see and understand not what's happening at that micro level, but at that higher macro level, where there are handoffs from one part of your organization to another. And very often those handoffs are what translates into wait time. So that little triangle that you're seeing in the middle of your screen, where you see, a little triangle sitting by activities, is typically a form of a queue in some way, shape, or form. It's working. It might be work in progress sitting on a Kanban board. It might be a queue, right, where work is sitting to be picked up in the form of a ticket from some type of management system. But being able to now understand kind of the white space between these different activities, and how long it is taking us to, number one, actually do the work, right, which is our process time or cycle time, and how long does it wait in between, right, all of those different work efforts on the part of the people participating in this value stream, really let you see then that end-to-end lead time. And here's where you can start to really get leadership attention, because when you show them a value stream map and the map says that doing the actual work takes 9.2 hours, but the end-to-end value stream takes 3.6 weeks, what's happening there, right? Why is work sitting? Why is it sitting in a wait state, right, for such a long period of time? And what can we do in order to reduce that wait time? And sometimes it might mean consolidating work activities. It might be moving where work activities get done. Those are the types of decisions you can make at the value stream level. I think one of the most interesting metrics that can also come out of value stream mapping is called quality percent. It's sometimes called percent complete and accurate. And what it tells us is for each of these activities, what is the percentage of times, and this is from the perspective of a person or a team receiving work, what is the percentage of time that we can take work and we can immediately get to work and we can do what we need to do? as opposed to having to go back to the previous step and say, hey, you need to provide us additional information, or hey, you didn't complete this one particular step, rework, right? So what percentage of time, right, can work just simply flow through our value stream? And that quality percent, in this particular case, the example says that 24 times out of 100, right, work made its way through this value stream without work. That's really bad, right? That's a really, really low percentage. So what can we do to reduce that rework and improve the quality of work that's making its way through that value stream? So it enables us to have some really great conversations around what's happening here and why, why is it taking so long? Why is the quality so low? And where are the constraints? So if you've read the Phoenix Project, you're likely familiar with the theory of constraints. What value stream mapping does is help you understand where that constraint is so that you can focus your efforts on making your improvements at that constraint. If you make improvements before the constraint, that's great. You might speed up the flow of work, but all you've done is speed it up into the constraint. And that's where we see the cues. That's where we see, right, the work that's sitting in that wait state because we don't have adequate resource in some way, shape, or form in order to allow the smooth flow of that work. If we're making a lot of improvements after the constraint, again, well, good, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not going to benefit your end-to-end lead time either, right? Because you've still got that work sitting behind the constraint. So it's important to get up over that kind of process way of thinking and up over the different functional areas so that you can really have that visual representation of where those constraints are. So what does the process look like? We're going to look at current state, we're going to look at a target future state, and we're going to figure out how do we get there, right? How do we get from where we are to where we want to be? You begin with the current state, and typically value stream mapping happens in a workshop setting. You bring together, we call it an A team of stakeholders that represent all of the stakeholders in that particular value stream, and you map out the work activity. And remember, you have to start out by, mapping out like the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then you're going to be able to kind of refine it to get to that macro level view. But it's really important not to bypass that. You want to make sure, first of all, that you really have a full understanding of what work is being done. And the way to have that understanding is by talking to the people who are doing the work. You also want to make sure that you're building empathy, right? Very often people kind of put their little blinders on and I focus on one part of a value stream and they don't necessarily know what, the folks before them or after them in the value stream are actually doing. And you see in value stream mapping workshops, a lot of ahas. It's like, wow, you're kidding. You have to do that before you can, or, to somebody who's after you in the value stream, I had no idea that if I did that one more thing, it would make your life a lot easier, right? So building that empathy is a really good and valuable part of your value stream mapping workshop. As a part of that workshop, you're also going to look at what your target future state is, where you want to go, right? But it's important to recognize that it's very unlikely that you can do that in one fell swoop. Most organizations can't absorb that much change. They can't absorb that much culture change. Very often with value stream mapping, at some point in time, you're going to start to change people's roles and responsibilities. You might change the organizational structure of your organization. And that very rarely is something that can happen overnight. So typically what you have is a transformation plan that speaks to what are the different loops of activity that we can undertake in order to get to that to that target future state. And you might begin with what are the things that we can do with current people, with our current tools, right? Just making improvements where we are. Maybe we have some range improvements that involve, right, changing some roles and responsibilities, maybe introducing some new technologies, and then longer term improvements. Our transformation plan is what really lays out what those improvements look like. But it's important to understand that this is not a definitive project plan where you have step by step, you know, do all these activities and then all will be well. Some of this is going to be experimentation. Some of this is going to involve really exploring maybe alternative ways of doing things and trying to figure out what is in fact the best approach. There's a lot of learning that goes on as a part of that transformation plan. So remember that with this transformation plan, some of your changes are going to be made at the system level, at that macro value stream level. You're also going to see a lot of process improvement efforts that flow out of your transformation plan. So how you handle changes, how you handle releases, right? You might look at individual processes. I'm sorry, I didn't clearly hear the question.
Sorry about that. Continue.
Oh, okay. So you might see things at a system level. You might see things at a process level. Again, there are going to be a myriad of changes that come out of that value stream mapping workshop. And there's a lot of different methods and techniques that you can use in order to kind of navigate your way through these different improvements. Many of these methods you're likely familiar with. They are proven methods, many of which have been around for a long time. And if you think back to where I started, that, you know, what really differentiates high performers from low performers is the ability to continuously improve. It really is in our best interest, in each and every one of us in the workforce today. It's in our best interest to understand these different continuous improvement methods and be able to kind of pull them out of your pocket on any given day and leverage them as a part of doing your work. Mike Gorson always says that almost more important than doing your work is the ability to improve how you do your work. So understanding that there's proven methods and techniques that you can leverage will really enable you to kind of think from a scoping and scale perspective, think appropriately about how you go about making changes. Some changes can be really small and can be made very, very quickly. Some changes are going to be more significant, and so there's going to have to be a greater level of engagement. You really have to just take those improvement initiatives on a case-by-case basis. And best practices can absolutely come into play here. But remember, again, none of these different frameworks stand alone. DevOps doesn't stand alone. Agile, Lean, IT service management, they don't stand alone. They all work together. There is no DevOps or ITIL or, you know, DevOps or Agile in this conversation. They all work together. And we have to leverage them in an effort to achieve delivery of value from our customers' perspective. So what this particular slide shows, and this is adapted from the DevOps Institute Site Reliability Engineering class, it shows that, again, there's these different, I was going to say new, but in many cases, they're not new ways of working. These different ways of working, you know, Agile, DevOps, IT service management, now SRE is very much emerging in the enterprise space. And in your role, you may find that DevOps practices are most applicable to you, but it is of value to understand that in the context of the greater value stream, all of these different frameworks, all of these different ways of working come together, right, and enable organizations to really achieve some tremendous capability. Again, in order to improve flow and speed up. I don't think there's an organization out there today that's not being challenged to speed up, to maximize value, to optimize cost, right? And leveraging all of these different ways of working will help you to do that. I want to just very quickly also give a nod to the fact that we're hearing another VSM emerging, and that is value stream management. So if you look at what Gartner and Forrester are talking about, and back in about 2017, they both started talking about value stream management. They're really talking about this from a platform perspective. So I'm not going to read through this whole entire table. I want to give a nod to another DevOps Institute ambassador, Helen Beal, who created this great table that shows the difference between value stream mapping and value stream management. And it really speaks to the fact that value stream mapping is that human-centric perspective that we've been talking about, getting people together, having them collaborate, having them understand and empathize, what each other is doing. Value stream management is very tool-centric perspective. It's a platform perspective. You hear Gartner talk a lot about value stream management platforms. You see that it's companies like, Digital AI and ServiceNow and Plutura and Desktop, who are some of the leaders in this emerging platform approach that is value stream management. You see, Gartner says by 2023, 70% of organizations will use value stream management to improve flow. And understand that this isn't replacing your DevOps tool chains, what Gartner refers to as value stream delivery platforms. This may be an extension of your DevOps tool chain. Again, it's kind of you think of it as an overarching platform. They very, very much work hand in hand. But it's important to understand, and Gartner is very clear about this, that this value stream management concept, these value stream platforms are in fact a significant investment that organizations should make once they have some experience and success in delivering products via DevOps, right? So we begin with value stream mapping, right? Begin with that understanding of your value streams. Look for those opportunities to make those significant improvements in terms of how you can optimize your work. For a lot of organizations who are getting started with DevOps, they very often start out by talking about their DevOps pipeline, and they can use value stream mapping as a technique to understand what that pipeline looks like. The pipeline is your overarching process. And then you build from there the tool chain that enables the flow of work through that pipeline. But remember, it's about making significant improvements. And you do that by really looking at ways to kind of strip out the waste of your value stream, and then improve where you do that work so that you can optimize the flow of value across your organizations and your functions and your processes. So quick recap: value streams make work visible at a macro level, at a very high level. They help you make strategic improvements. So why you're doing the work you're doing, and perhaps more importantly, like, should you even be doing this work, right? And where the work is being done. They help you identify and reduce those constraints. Think about the theory of constraints. And they enable the fast flow of value to your customers. It's really about flow. So questions for me. This is always my favorite part of any presentation, is questions on any or all of the topics we talked about. Garima, did anybody chat in any questions by any chance?
Yes, we have a lot of people on the call today, and I believe that there will be some questions at least coming your way. I would like to congratulate Dana, you for putting that perspective together about what value stream mapping is and what value stream management is. A lot of folks are kind of confused, and probably we are trying to find answers to those questions. So thank you very much for that pointer. And then we open the forum for questions. If you have any questions, please do put up right away, because we have some time, and Dana is here to answer those questions.
Right. Any and all questions?
Yeah.
So I have a question. This is Armando. First, thank you very much for this very good and insightful presentation.
You're welcome.
I was wondering, because, you know, at a high level, everything makes sense, right? When we talk about, you know, methodologies and tools, but sometimes we struggle in where to get started, like tactically speaking. What would be like the first steps, and how do we validate that we are actually performing the steps and the value stream mapping to according to best practices?
So there are, and you know, we certainly couldn't cover it in this short presentation, but there are kind of within that process, there are specific steps that you're going to undertake. And it really begins with, is there a problem that needs to be addressed? Because again, you don't want to undertake value stream mapping just because it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of planning. You're going to bring together a lot of people and you're going to spend, right, typically a few days together really trying to understand this value stream. Don't do that, right? If there's not a significant problem that you are in fact trying to solve, or a specific reason that you need to look at value stream mapping. So start with understanding the strategy of your organization, the goals of your organization. So if you're being challenged to speed up, if you're being challenged to, you know, drive cost efficiency, if you're being challenged to improve quality, maybe you've got product quality type issues, right? Start with that. Start with the fact that, all right, we've got a problem that needs to be addressed. And now let's start to understand what is the value stream that's associated with that work. And you can have, you know, a value stream that represents your overall end-to-end kind of product development value stream, from somebody has an idea through to you introduce a new product in your organization. But you can also look at segments of your value stream. And again, that's what a lot of folks do with DevOps, right? They kind of look at, all right, let's start out by looking at it from the perspective of maybe from build through to release, right? Let's look at that part of it and then extend out from there. So again, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And what is the value stream associated with that problem? And then you want to undertake a little bit of a scoping exercise, right? Because you do in fact have to put some boundaries around that value stream. And that's going to then let you understand who needs to participate in your value stream mapping workshop.
Donna, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and we have another question from William. Would you like to share your question, William?
Sure. Thank you, Garima. Thank you, Donna. I was a little confused. I joined at 20 past. I thought it was starting at 12:30 today, but I got a big chunk of it. My question is, I have two actually. First question, how did VSM move from its assembly line roots to IT, and what is different there? Because I think it's got a history and we're adapting it. I don't know if you covered this, but this is something important for me.
So I like touched on it a little tiny bit. In 2010, and probably he started, you know, work on this much earlier than that, 27, 28. Jez Humble published a book called Continuous Delivery. And it was in that book that Jez really first started translating how we can apply these lean production methods that, you know, the roots very much are in the 1950s in the manufacturing environment. How can we start to apply these lean principles, and how can we leverage lean tools and techniques in the context of IT? So that's where you really started to see conversations about things like continuous delivery, right? Which really is, you know, very often viewed as, you know, one of the primary value streams. If you look at the continuous delivery activities, one of the primary value streams that we have in the context of DevOps. And about that same time, Mike Gorzen wrote a book called Lean IT. And Mike too really started talking about, you know, how we can leverage lean principles and apply them to an IT setting. And sometimes folks think they're not applicable because in a manufacturing environment, and in fact, my roots are, one of my very first jobs was working in a manufacturing environment. In the shop floor, right, you're very focused on standardization and you're very focused on producing the same exact product every single time, right? So sometimes people think, well, software is not like that. Every, you know, piece of software is different. Every line of code is different, but we still want to drive efficiencies. We still want to introduce standard ways of working in terms of how we design and develop and, you know, deliver our products and services. And that doesn't mean that along the way, we're not doing all kinds of experimentation and constantly looking for new ways of working. But even if you think about, you know, complexity thinking, you really want to eventually get to a place where you now understand the complexity and you then look for, right, how you can standardize your ways of working. So it has taken us a little while, right, to understand, right, how to apply these concepts in an IT setting. But we're getting there, right? We're really very much starting to see, we have seen, right? We've seen concepts like continuous delivery and continuous deployment very much widely accepted. We are now starting to see the DevOps community start to understand that you can't just look at, you know, from build to release, right? You have to start thinking about what happens during, you know, your design activities, what happens in production. That's really where we're starting to see the rise of SRE, right? I always say that SRE kind of puts the ops in DevOps in a very modern way. Because what SRE is doing is kind of bringing the wisdom of production into the development, into the design, all the way back to the design and development, and helping organizations to make improvements, right? As we see the workflow through our value streams. So I hope that answers your question. I could talk about that for like a long time, but I'll stop now. I'm sorry.
It goes beyond it, but it also leads me into my next one, which I thought was kind of a separate topic, but it seems to be more of a follow-up now. So my second question, if I may, where in IT can VSM be most useful? In infrastructure, app development, client service? Maybe in some areas it's already well established, and in other areas it's still a bit of a challenge. Could you go into that a bit?
Sure. So, you know, I'll start with the context of DevOps. I very often see where organizations that are starting to introduce DevOps start with value stream mapping out their pipeline, right? Looking at the continuous delivery pipeline. But absolutely in IT, you can apply it in other areas. So a really common example is infrastructure provisioning, right? Think about, you know, I hear all the time organizations say it takes weeks, if not months, to provision new infrastructure. And as you now move to infrastructure as code, as you move to the cloud, right, you really have to completely rethink that. And you want to get to a place where this is a self-service activity that can happen within minutes, right? That's a tremendous value stream mapping opportunity. And I've seen organizations that through value stream mapping have gone from taking, you know, weeks or months to provision infrastructure to that happening again through self-service automatically within minutes. If we take it even out of IT a little bit. Another really common example of value stream mapping is onboarding of new employees. So think about a new employee who's coming into your organization. They need a myriad of things, right? They need technology, they need access to the different systems. There's security considerations that come into play there. You know, and even outside of IT, again, there's facilities and there's different parts of the organization who all need to be engaged in order to get that new employee up and running and productive within your organization as quickly as possible. So think about all the different functional areas within your organization that are involved in those activities. Tremendous opportunity for value stream mapping. I also see it a lot from just coming back to IT for one last example. And in fact, this is IDLE 4. One of the IDLE 4 publications is called Create, Deliver, and Support. And in the Create, Deliver, and Support publication, they actually, and there's a course associated with that, they actually introduce the correct to detect value stream. So it's not just incident management per se, but think about correct to detect, detect to correct. You've got monitoring activity, you're monitoring, you know, your systems in production environment, monitoring maybe detects some kind of an incident. We need to take that incident, we need to diagnose what's going on with that incident. Maybe we have to make a change in order to correct whatever is happening with that particular incident. You know, we then are going to release that change. So there's a lot of processes that are potentially involved from that detect to correct. And there's a tremendous opportunity there with value stream mapping in order to make sure that there's smooth flow across all of those different processes. And it's really where IDLE 4, organizations are really starting to recognize that IDLE 4, one of the values that it brings is that it challenges organizations to go up to that value stream level. So instead of just thinking about monitoring and incident management and change management and having those be essentially silos within your organization that don't work together, how can we have that smooth flow? So a handful of examples that I hope are useful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Donna. This is Shantanu.
Hi.
So first of all, thank you for the wonderful session. It was really insightful. I'm a very new entrant to value stream, and I'm kind of, quite amazed with the whole outlines that you have shown. So thanks a lot for that. My question is quite more open-ended one, so not too contextual. It's more of a situation. So let's say, there's a situation where the organizational divisional pods are already on the path of implementing a transformation model. So on that situation, they have already started with a core roadmap. Eventually, once it resonated down to the divisions, they are kind of figuring out that they are not quite aligned with the central model and need more divisional alignments. So maybe the central roadmap is not quite aligned, and there is a tech niche, in the divisional way of doing it. But there is immense pressure on the timelines when we talk about the geographical spread. On a situation like this, how is this to be positioned and qualified as a course aligner for the divisions that we are speaking of?
So by virtue of the fact that you have different divisions who are engaging, right, there is an opportunity to use value stream mapping because again, it sits up over different functional areas within the organization. So it helps, it provides a tremendous opportunity to get those folks together and have them talk about how they can work more efficiently and effectively together. I appreciate the time constraint perspective. And it is important to understand that a true value stream mapping initiative, while your workshop is typically, a 3-day event, there is a lead time.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably talking T-minus 6 weeks out, right? Until you hold your workshop. Because think about it, you really want to make sure that everything I talked about, get clear on the problem. And part of that can be get clear on what the strategic goals are that have been laid out in that transformation plan. Go through your scoping exercise. make sure that you identify who are the right stakeholders to engage, get the workshop on those people's schedules, right? That's just not something that can happen quickly. It's going to take, right? Typically, we always say T-minus 6 weeks out, right? To undergo all of those planning activities. So kind of recognize that part of it, that it is a valuable tool, but it is one of those things that you have to appreciate, that in order to do it well, in order to have it successful, there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes planning that has to occur. So that has to be taken into consideration. But it is a good use case for that kind of situation, right? Where you're just trying to get everybody aligned around a strategy, or, help people figure out what is the best way to navigate through a transformation. It is really a transformational technique.
Indeed. I think,
Go ahead, I'm
the
sorry.
kind of no, sorry. Sorry to interrupt, but yes, that's indeed true. The kind of acknowledgement that we expect for any problem is, the first thing of solving a problem is that, you're acknowledging there is a problem. Now when we are talking about most of the centrally run transformation programs, the way we see it across different countries and the divisions that those countries run on, is that they kind of align with the central program. But there is always a value missing in what exactly they can do, or maybe better, what they can do out, of their own divisions, which are not basically seen from the center at a very clean angle. So that's where we try to position these value adds, that you have to first introspect on the problem and how exactly you have pointed out, to get into a kind, not at a macro level, but now eventually at a micro level. How do you see these things? And once that is kind of acknowledged and thought through, this is going to be really a game changer. But thanks a lot, Donna, for this point.
And I just want to say, that's where these different techniques come into play, because out of that transformation plan are going to flow a lot of different improvement activities. And you're absolutely right that how we do things in the States versus how things are done in India or some other part of the world will in fact vary. So what you want to do is reach agreement at that macro level to understand, why and where we're going to do the work. And then down at the more micro level, you figure out how to do that work. And that can in fact be localized, and it's okay that it's localized. I years and years ago, I was doing a process improvement initiative with AT&T, and we were trying to put in place a global process for how we handled changes. And it was really the first time where it kind of smacked me in the face, right? How differently people work in different parts of the world. And we really kind of, it helped me understand that, typically there is in fact a macro level that everybody can agree on, right? And there's maybe going to be core metrics that you're going to agree on. We're all going to capture lead time. We're all going to capture cycle time. We're all going to capture quality percentage, right? So that you can start to compare, how everybody's performing across the organization. And from there, the how of how you do the work, again, can in fact be localized.
Thanks a lot, Donna, for this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very. Do we have any other question? We have room for one more question.
Yes, Garima, this is Antra. I have one question, and thank you, Donna, for this informative session. So what I think is this is an ongoing, a continuous improvement process. So value stream mapping is something that we need to perform when there is a problem, and then we can apply the tools and techniques and then adopt a solution for it. So for example, an organization is already undergoing a transformation based on the value stream mapping that was done. And then eventually over the years, and then this organization is a big organization with multiple segments, and they have adopted DevOps, for example. And then eventually over the years, they do another value stream mapping just to see how competent or how much at pace they are with the market. And then they find there's a gap, and they might have to adopt or foresee another transformation. So how difficult, what is the impact on the time to market? uh,
Well, the impact on the time to market will depend on how poorly your value stream is performing and why it's performing poorly. So I first of all just want to acknowledge what you said, that you absolutely do have to go back and look at, did we achieve our target state? And you also might need to understand that it's the nature of experimentation and continuous improvement, that through that you may learn that what we thought was going to be a great target state actually isn't, right? So it is one of those things where you have to kind of constantly be looking at that target state and understanding if it still makes sense in the context of your organizational strategies and goals. But one of the things that, so to come back to your question about lead time, one of the things that you have to look at with lead time in particular is the scope of your value stream. So let me give you, I'm going to use ING as an example, the bank ING. So ING talks a lot and has done a good job of telling the story of their DevOps journey. And they talked about the fact that early on, they introduced DevOps and they saw some improvements, but they were really looking at it in the context of things like continuous integration and continuous delivery. So it was kind of like they were making changes within IT, and they were getting good at delivering software more quickly, right, within the boundaries of like build and release. But think about it, they hadn't moved lead time at all, right? Because they still had parts of the business who weren't using agile ways of working, right? They still wanted to define traditional requirements, definition documents, and define all the features and lay that all out up front and sign off, right? All that traditional activity. And they also still had traditional release management activities where they were bundling changes into quarterly releases, right? So all these little great changes that the organization was making very, very quickly with DevOps were all stacking up behind those quarterly releases. So now we have to look at the scope of the value stream, right? Now we have to extend the scope of the value stream and look at how we're introducing agility from the enterprise perspective. So do we shift how our organization thinks from an agile perspective, and that means getting the lines of business used to working in agile ways and used to things like, defining minimum viable products and defining, requirements that are not quite, cast in concrete, and then it might evolve over time. And it also then involves adapting your IT service management capabilities so that you can make changes continuously, right? So that you can, in fact, be making changes on a daily basis, and not have this idea of stacking things up behind releases. It's not until you do that, right? It's not until you start to look at the end-to-end value stream that you really now have started to make a major impact on lead time. Because if you still have a bunch of time up front in terms of how you design things, and you still have a bunch of time on the end in terms of how you release things, you haven't really shifted your lead time yet. You've just gotten faster in the beginning, in the middle, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So really what value stream mapping is going to challenge you to do is now extend the boundaries of your value stream and now start to think about it from the true enterprise perspective. And that's, again, this is emerging, but if you actually read what Gardner and Forrester are talking about in terms of value stream management, and I hate that we're leading with a tool conversation, but they are talking about, right, that end-to-end from the enterprise perspective, from how you take an idea through to recognizing the fact that you have in fact realized value, not just stopping at we've released it, but actually starting to introduce customer satisfaction and customer experience metrics so that you have that feedback loop coming back in that you can then use for continuous improvement. So think about the three ways, like fast flow from left to right, fast feedback from right to left, and then continuous experimentation and learning. So the lead time thing, the scope of your value stream, right, is going to have a bearing on how successful you are in terms of improving your lead time. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Donna. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the questions. And I actually couldn't stop myself from an example. I know that we will run over time with 2 minutes, but the example, Antara, you actually brought forward, I have seen two different aspects when we talk about DevOps and value stream mapping. I've seen organizations initiating and forking off multiple cloud initiatives, and these multiple functional units are doing their cloud initiatives on the side. And think about it, like if this cloud initiative has a common governance, common way how to kind of bring these together, how much lead time you can actually optimize. So this is one area which is like practically you can apply. The second area which I have seen, and it's practical examples with CI/CD pipeline. So people who are working with DevOps, they would know that, okay, there is a single source of truth, that's your repository and the source code. But then a lot of divisions and the functional units, if your enterprise has a lot of products, each of these units will like to have their own CI/CD pipeline, and that's okay. But what has resulted in a lot of lead time is that every functional unit starts to create their own DevOps pipeline and CI/CD pipeline without actually taking it into account the common governance, the common knowledge available with other functional units. So that's another area where you can apply value stream mapping and see what are the things you can optimize and bring together and what can remain distributed, right? So these are like practical examples of consolidation of these things. And of course tools can solve some of the problems, but these are basic value which value stream mapping exercises can bring forward. And then you can actually look into the tool part and end-to-end perspective, bringing the value stream management aspect. Hopefully that makes sense. I will stop here and then
Very thoughtful, Garima. Thank you so much.
No worries. And lastly, we have an announcement to make today. We have some discount coupons for some value stream mapping trainings coming up. So if you're interested to actually take the next step in your journey and to actually know more about value stream mapping and how practically it has been used in organizations, please do touch base with us. I will follow up with you all with an email. And in case your organization is looking for some kind of value stream mapping workshops or consultations, I think Donna has a lot of information around this. She has displayed how much knowledge she has in this context. So I would appreciate if you can actually let us know if you have any such perspectives. And you can see my daughter at the background. Hopefully that's not distracting you. So that is what we had today. Obviously, people who have not joined our meetup group, I encourage that you can actually join the meetup group. We will be coming up with a lot of these types of sessions in the future. So it will be like the common platform where you can get information. And lastly, I actually had one question in the chat that do we have a YouTube channel? Yes, we do have a YouTube channel. Unfortunately, because I did not have access to two screens, I couldn't share it with you guys here in the chat, but I will follow it up on the meetup group and through the email. Okay, before we actually thank Donna for this excellent conversation which we have, and of course with the audience and the participation of the audience, it becomes incredible, right?
Yes.
So I would like to reflect, Donna, how did you feel about this whole conversation? And if you have anything to share with us before we close off.
I want to say thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. Thank you absolutely for the questions. And you've actually all kind of challenged me to give more thought to that idea of having kind of a transformation maybe a central or global level, and then how that gets localized. So I appreciate you gave me a little challenge to think about, and I appreciate that.
Okay, so then bye for now, and stay tuned for our next sessions. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you,
Thanks
Donna.
for having me.
Bye-bye.